Hello everybody, welcome back to the Unfan Podcast. Today we're going to discuss, chat and sort of really analyse that absolute pile of shit we had to witness as England fans last night as they drew 0-0 with Scotland in Euro 2020, specifically in Group D. We're going to talk about all the different factors why I think that performance was so bad for England and sort of just really go through it, hopefully in a concise way, not drag it out longer than it needs to be, sort of just give what I'm thinking. And also, I'm looking forward to see what you've got to say in the comments down below. Give your thoughts. I'll be responding to all of them as per usual, because I think, at this point we've sort of just come together as England fans, chat about it, talk about it as a performance, and just give your thoughts. But I'm going to get straight into it, really. And first of all, I think it's something that I want to do, and that's sort of just say fair play to Scotland and say that you had a game plan. You knew what you needed to do. Really, it wasn't going to be easy to perform it. You knew what you needed to do, but could you do it was the big question. And the answer was a very, very, very solid yes. You had a work rate, you had a game plan, and the way that you performed both of those things was fantastic. And that's one of the biggest reasons why you got the draw. As much as England were horrific, I don't want to take anything away from Scotland. You were fantastic from minute 1 to minute 90. Unlike your opposition, England. And that's the most important thing from a Scotland point of view. They're going to take that point, and that is a crucial 1 point in Group D for them, and fair play to them. But from an England perspective, there's so much to discuss, and this is the morning after. I've had time to sort of dissect it, sleep on what was a horrific performance, and now sort of come in a less rash way. It still is going to come across very rash, I'm not going to lie to you, but that's because I'm annoyed and disappointed with what I saw last night, because we get excited, we get ready for a big game, we get excited for the Euros, and what was a decent start against Croatia has now just sort of been put back in a real reality check for England last night against Scotland. Let's be honest, some of the biggest facts I've got them written down here. First of all, it was such a slow game. England played a tempo. They played like snails. They were they was just slow off the mark. They had no tempo to the game. The passing, they had no idea with what they wanted to do with the ball. Outside of when they didn't have the ball, they had the ball 60% of the time. They had 60% possession. But when they had it, they didn't do anything with it. They didn't use the possession they have. They didn't do anything with it in a positive way. And when you've got the ball, it's all right having the ball. It's all right making a few chances, which, let's be honest, they didn't do. But, when you've got the ball, you've got to do something with it. It sounds stupid, it sounds basic, but it's true. And England really, really failed to do that. We looked out of ideas. We lacked real chances being created. We made a few here and there, but ultimately not enough to win a game of football. And England, if you're not going to take your chances, and you're not going to make many chances at all, you're going to be left in a position like we were last night, where defensively I thought we were okay. I mean, Scotland, came close a few times. I thought defensively we were right, but going forward we were absolutely useless. We couldn't do it. We couldn't create chances. We couldn't finish the very, very small amount of chances that we did manage to make. And I've got to be honest with you, we missed 3 big chances as well. So I didn't think we made many big chances, but we missed 3 of the ones that we did make, and that is never a good sign in a football game. Like I said there, we had 60% possession, they had 40. We dominated the ball, we dominated the game for majorities of it, but we didn't do anything with it. We could control a game, we can do what we want with the ball, but what you're going to do with it is the most important thing, and England failed to do that. I think the biggest chance that I can remember probably is that Stones header from the corner. He should have scored that. It's a free header. It was quite bad defending from a Scotland point of view. I think they really did get away with one, but ultimately from a Scotland, they're not going to care now, are they? That one bit of defended in the game. I thought other than that, defensively Scotland were very, very strong. They set up in a defensive way. They defended for their lives, and they didn't just do that as well. I thought, in respect for Scotland, they did come at us and give us a game. But other than that, they did defend very, very well. And England struggled to sort of perform against what was a very, very strong block of Scotland players. But we hit the work with Stones. It was a free header. We should have scored from that. Sterling came forward and put a ball in. And Mason Mount maybe could have finished that chance. But again, I think that probably will class as a big chance, but it's not an easy chance to convert. England had double the expected goals than Scotland, but ultimately the game finishes 0-0, so no one really cares. And then also we made nearly double the amount of passes, and we've already mentioned possession and having the ball and not doing anything with it, but we had double the amount of passes than Scotland had, but yet did absolutely nothing with the ball in a positive way. Like I said, maybe a few things here and there, but nothing really when you talk about percentage of what we did with the ball and what we had with the ball to what we actually did in a positive, and did we make a positive impact on the game as an England perspective? The answer for that has to be no. I think, to be honest with you, arguably probably is. What I watched was probably one of the worst England performances under Gareth Southgate that we've seen. We've watched him in the World Cup, and we watched him now obviously going into these Euros and a few games in between as well. And I thought it was really, really, really poor. Now there probably are a few aspects of some friendlies and some international qualifiers that that weren't great. But when it matters, when everyone's watching, people aren't watching you play against Romania in a warm-up friendly, but everyone's watching you play Scotland, and we really, really disappointed ourselves and disappointed the nation, to be honest with you. And we embarrassed ourselves in front of millions across the world. And when you do that, it is such a disappointing feeling because everyone's tuning into that game. It's England-Scotland. It's the massive game. The build-up, the hype for that game is everything. And when you perform like that, it's just really, really embarrassing. And from a fan's perspective, even at the age I am, I haven't had the trauma of having to watch England in tournaments before this and being unsuccessful. And I've only really remember probably the tournament before the World Cup in Brazil, and then mainly the World Cup in Brazil. Obviously, then the Euros, with Roy Hodgson, we got knocked out to Iceland, then the last World Cup, and then this one. So, thankfully, I haven't had to experience all of those. And I'm not saying, and we haven't been knocked out. I think that's the most important to remember as well. We haven't been knocked out, but the performance feels really, really down and worrying for the rest of the tournament. And that's the most important thing that's got to be said as well. We're not out of this tournament. We haven't been knocked out. We're not going home. But what we are doing is putting ourselves in a position where it's worrying a lot of the fans, and it's certainly worrying me last night. Because if that's what we play against Scotland, we've seen Croatia are not the team they were before. We didn't really know what Croatia were going to be like. We didn't know whether or not we were going to see the World Cup Croatia from a few years ago that knocked us out. We didn't really, did we? We beat them 1-0. We controlled the game quite well. We looked quite decent. But last night, we were so poor. And it was a real reality check from an England perspective. It was a real reality check. And we saw the real England. We had no idea to break Scotland. We ran out of ideas, to break Scotland down. We couldn't defend against what was we couldn't attack against what was such a defensive Scotland side. I don't mean that in a negative way, to be honest with you. I don't. I mean that in a fair play perspective from a Scotland point of view, but also a really disappointing, embarrassing perspective from an England one. We knew that we were going to have to play against a Scotland side that were going to defend for their lives, but we still couldn't stop it, and that's such a disappointing performance. We lacked creativity and open play. Kane still struggled again. He looked really, really off it. He looks a player that's not fit at the moment. We'll come on to a little bit more about Harry Kane in a second. Like I said, I don't want to drag it out for hours and hours. It's not worth it. It's not what I want to do. I don't want to just make podcast episodes talking about an England performance like this for the sake of it. I'll just give my honest thoughts, get it off my chest really, and then move on. I think we sort of have we used to have the luxury of being able to sort of rest players in these other games. I think if we beat Scotland, and then if we beat we did beat Croatia, so if we beat Scotland and we go into that Czech Republic game pretty comfortable and already qualified pretty much, I think we could go into the game being able to play different players and really experiment going into the round of 16, giving other players a shout. But we can't now because we're now heading into a Czech Republic game, which literally means so much from an England perspective. I don't mean that in the sense that I think we're not going to qualify. We're not mathematically qualified, but we will qualify out of Group D. Whether or not that's first or second, I think everyone thought we were going to top the group. For me included, I thought that we should top the group. I thought if Croatia are playing the way that they are, and England were playing to the expectation that we all thought, we'd easily top the group. But Czech Republic, fair play to them, they're coming out and doing a great job, and it really sets up a difficult test for England on Tuesday night. I worry about England on Tuesday. I really, really worry about England on Tuesday because I think if we play anything like we did against Scotland, and even worse, I think Czech Republic really, really could. See what Czech Republic did against Croatia and what they did against Scotland. Why can't they do that to England? I think if England aren't on it, they really, really could. They could shock England. I don't think it would be a shock. I think a lot of fans are worrying about this game because we're really sort of seeing the poor side of England in its true colours at the moment, and that's a really, really worrying thing. We've got to talk about Gareth Southgate, the way that he set up the performance and the way that he set up the team. I don't think he should take all the blame, but I think he should take majority of it. I think the players themselves obviously will have to take minor bits of the criticism and probably will take quite a lot of the criticism. Fair play, but the manager Gareth Southgate, he's the man leading the players out. He sets up the team. He's tactically the man in charge, and he set the team up wrong. He set the team up again, Mr. Cautious, coming back out to play. He sets up teams not to lose. That's fine. But it's fine against your France, it's fine against your Portugal, it's fine against your Spain. It's no disrespect to Scotland, but we just had to go for Scotland. We just had to go for Scotland. We just had to just go and use the amazing talent, the young talent we've got. And we've got to pose the question, is Gareth Southgate getting the best or the most out of this England squad? And I've got to be honest with you and say it in a way that I don't want to go in on Gareth Southgate, because we haven't been knocked out, and he could still perform. We've got to still believe until it's not physically possible. But let's pose the question, is he really the right man for the job? Is he the man really able to take us through and be successful as a nation, and specifically with these group of players? I really do have my doubts, to be honest with you. The way that we've seen him play and set up England teams, specifically in these last, yesterday, but also we have seen it. Let's not pretend it was the first time. The first time yesterday. We saw it. We've seen it before. He's a manager that does play cautious football. He plays not to win. He sets up teams. Not to lose. He plays plays in a way that not to lose the game. We didn't lose, but we played a really, really nullifying, boring game of football. I don't like using the word boring in a football match, because I think it's a system, it's a philosophy, but it was boring. It was really, really boring. We always talk about, and leading up to the tournament, let's remember, all we're chatting about is, who are we going to take? The attacking qualities we've got. We've got Sancho, we've got Sterling, we've got Kane, we've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, we've got Lingard potentially could come. We've got Foden, we've got Grealish, we've got Mount, we've got all these different players. We've got Saka. We've got all these players that we could take, and it's such an exciting time as England fans. We get to a tournament, and then we just embarrass ourselves like that again. And again, I want to stress, I don't mean this in a rash way. We're not knocked out of the competition. It's one game that we drew 0-0 with, but it's a worrying performance, isn't it? It's a really, really worrying performance. And where does Gareth Southgate go from here? The title of the podcast is going to sound rash, but it's how I feel. Is it time for Gareth Southgate either to change the way he plays, and he's got to. It is time for that to happen, or is it time that he just sort of goes, maybe this is a bit of a step too far. Maybe it's slightly out of my comfort zone. I don't question the fact that he knows how much this means to be his England manager. He's been an England player. He knows the importance and the significance of this role, but what I've got to question is the way that he plays, the way that he sets up as an England manager. Really, really worries me as an England fan. And yesterday we saw that in true colours, from top to bottom. I thought we were really, really bad. Not from top to bottom. I thought defensively we were okay. I thought Scotland got in a few times. I don't think we were perfect defensively. We kept a clean sheet, but I thought specifically in those attacking forward areas we were so poor. Harry Kane looks unfit. He doesn't look like a player that doesn't look like his true self. Before this tournament, we're talking about one of the best European strikers in the world. Sorry, one of the best European strikers in Europe. That makes sense. One of the probably, but you could even say one of the best strikers in the world, arguably. And I probably couldn't argue with that before the competition. He had a great season with Spurs, in a difficult Spurs side, but he looks off it, doesn't he? He looks like he really doesn't look like he wants to be playing for England. He doesn't look like he wants it. I'm sure he does. I don't question his attitude, but he doesn't look on it. He really doesn't look on it. Sterling played 90 minutes of football. How's he done that? I think the substitutions from Gareth Southgate again are poor. He reminds me of Ollie in that in the Europa League final, making no subs until the last 2 minutes when you just bring fresh legs on. And I think Ollie's got some sort of reason to do that at Man United. He hasn't got the options to bring on Jack Grealish, Sancho, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Jude Bellingham. He's got that quality on the bench. I mean, Ollie doesn't have that as much. He could have made a few. We're not going to come into that, but he's got a few players that that he could bring on, but not to the extent that Gareth Southgate's got. He could bring on Jude Bellingham. He can bring on the players I just mentioned there, but he decides not to. He brings them on when it's too late. He brings the wrong players off. He brings Foden on, one of the most creative players in this England side when we're 0-0 and we're still drawing the game. He brings Harry Kane off. Yeah, he wasn't having a great game, but he should not be coming off before Raheem Sterling. I know he scored a goal last week. I said in the match reaction last week, I said he was all right. He was okay, but he was not. He was not on it again. He scored a goal, but other than that, he had that sort of 20-second period when he did score the goal that he looked on it, and then other than that, he was really, really dire. And then we speak about him yesterday. He played 90 minutes of football again. He didn't come off, and I don't understand it. I do not understand it from an England perspective, how Raheem Sterling can play 90 minutes of football. He didn't impact the game in a positive way, and nor did others. It's not just Raheem Sterling. I don't want to just sound like I'm singling him out. There were others as well, but Raheem Sterling played 90 minutes of football, and that is sort of partly partly him, but partly Gareth Southgate mostly, because he could have brought him off. He could have brought on Jadon Sancho. He could have brought on other players, but he decided not to. He decided to not do that. So, that he has got to take criticism and the blame for that decision. He really could have changed the game in a positive way, but decided not to, and that's ultimately why we've drawn that game 0-0. Again, I'm going to stress finally that I don't think it should be Southgate out. I don't think he's going to be sacked or should be sacked. Obviously, just after one performance, obviously at that. I don't think it is just one performance, I would say, because I think we've seen it before, but he's not going to be sacked, let's be honest. I don't think he should be. He provided us a very, very good World Cup, but he's providing us at the moment a really, really disappointing performance yesterday. And if anything like that carries on, I think this could be the end for Gareth Southgate if he doesn't change the way he plays, if he doesn't set up the team in a more positive way. I saw in his press conference, he tried to defend the fact that we couldn't break him down. Well, you're the manager, mate. You're the manager. You can change things. Let's be honest. And I've said fair play to Scotland. I don't want to disrespect them. I don't want to sound like I'm disrespecting Scotland, but they haven't got the quality that England have got. We should be able to break a team down with what is it? Jack Hendry, Scott McTominay, and the other one at the back for Scotland. They've got good players. Sorry, Kieran Tierney, should I say, at the back as well. He came back into that back three, didn't he? They got some good players, but not to the quality of England have got going forward. And we couldn't do it. We couldn't break them down. And that's really, really worrying and disappointing going into the remainder of this tournament. But that's what I think, really. I'm not going to drag it on for any longer. That's what I think about England against Scotland last night. Quite disappointing, quite upsetting, and quite worrying going into the rest of the competition. Like I said, give your thoughts down below in the comments. I'll be responding to, and reading all of them as per usual. I want to hear from your thoughts on that game. Subscribe and leave a like if you're new. So much content coming like this through the summer, through the tournament. Hopefully more positive ones than this one. Take care, stay safe, have a good rest of your weekend. I'll see you in a bit.